Well, I think this is timely since I just received this last week. Um, the newest volume in the Operational Studies Group, Library of Napoleonic Battles by Kevin Zucker. This is Napoleon's End. Pre-ordered this and they were shipping out this past couple weeks. And since this has arrived, I just thought it would be a good time to explain how the heck I arrived at this series and what I think of it. It's not really a review, it's just kind of a synopsis of my journey and how I ended up owning most of the volumes. You can see there's a couple that are out right now. I've got one downstairs I'm taking a look at, getting the counters sorted. The only one I don't own right now of all the ones that have been published is Bonaparte and the Quadrilateral, and I'm kind of waiting. I might not be able to find that for much cheaper than a little over $100, but I do have all the rest. And there's one coming out next February. February seems to be the time that OSG comes out with the new volume, and I think there's one next year. I can't think of the top of my head what that. I think it's Napoleon Counterattacks, something like that, and that's available to pre-order now. But it's not something you need to do right away. I usually wait until maybe a month or two before. So maybe not till December of this coming year, because you do have to pay up front with this company. So how did I get to this point, owning almost all the volumes? I actually started, I was curious about the system, and I think I got La Patrie en Danger a number of years ago, and a couple others, I don't remember which ones. And then I got into some other stuff, and I was kind of hung up on the rule systems, not necessarily how difficult they were. There's not a difficult rule set, but there was a lot of online discussion, and there still is, on the Stumpner rules, which we'll get into in a minute. And going back and forth, and I just I didn't want to get that involved in deciding what system to use, and maybe it was a system that was broken. I didn't know enough about it to really understand the back and forth, and so I ended up selling those. And then as I was doing some more reading, and especially on this OSG website, and things that Kevin Zucker has written about, and his background, and then I gradually started getting back into it, and I played several different ways. I played with the original Zucker rules, which it's not really evolving, but they're fine-tuning things as the years have gone by. There's not a lot of difference. I think there's more clarifications on some rules than anything else. And then the Stumpner rules, maybe I just instead of going into detail, because I'd like to do a video on the particular scenario and volume I'm playing right now, which is Bonaparte invades Piedmont. And this system is a little bit of a throwback, not necessarily a throwback, but because it was begun so long ago, it's kind of old school. Especially when you talk about the combat charts. If I can grab a combat chart here, you can see that it's just odds based, 1 to 1, 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1, etc. But if you notice on this that it's fairly retreat based, it's not very bloody, and I think that's one of the things, one of the 2 or 3 big things that are different with the Stumpner rules compared to this, and that's the combat tables. Also in how they use bombardment. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the differences. I might talk about a little bit as we go through the playthrough of this particular scenario, but suffice it to say that the Stumpner combat table is quite a bit more bloody, and it's based more on fire factors. In units fire, say if you were looking at this one, that particular unit would fire 3, and then you roll on a table and it would give you the number of steps, if any, that the defender or the other side would have to lose. Bombardment actually ends up being much the same way. There are step losses involved. Another major difference between the two is how they handle command. And I would say this, and the order system. There's an order system in the Stumpner rules. I would say that's akin to if you've played Line of Battle System, the Civil War Line of Battle System by Multiman Publishing. That reminds me of that, and that you send some orders out, and then there's a variety of orders you can give, and then you have to roll to see if they're accepted and acted upon, etc., etc. So that's a big change. Trying to think of, that's probably the 2 biggest ones, is the way the command works and the way the order system works, additional to the order system, and then the fire combat tables, and how that is much more of a bloody system. This is much more small attrition and retreat based. So you want to try to get the opposing side into a position where they're surrounded, because zone of control are important in the sense of retreating. You cannot retreat through any zone of control, even if you've got units in that hex. And if you can't do that, the units are eliminated. So you can lose stacks of units at one time under this system, if you have some zone of controls that are covered as you're attacking. The things I like about this series, first off, is the components, the maps especially. I think a lot of people have commented on how beautiful the maps are, the detail that's gone into these. Research is quite extensive. The counters are perfectly suited for the system. This is attack, movement, and then initiative right here in the middle. In the Stumpner rules, there's a morale number that you have to use for units, because individual morale comes into play quite a bit. The player aid cards are numerous. You'll get casualty record cards. This is how you keep track of particular formations and their losses. And once they get to a certain point on this chart for that particular battle, then they become demoralized. That whole corps or whatever type of formation is, could be a division on the Russian side, say, but then you'll have a demoralized formation that does not operate as efficiently, affects initiative and whatnot. The one thing I will say about this, which might scare off solo players like myself, and you can do this online with Vassal, which would work really well. But if you, like me, like the tactile feeling of actually having the board, the map, and the counters out and being able to look at everything at once, the original rule system, the one that is right now as written, uses hidden movement and hidden units. And you may have seen, actually they're not too far away, about an hour and a half away from me, the Thursday night Napoleonic, I'm not sure what they call it. It's a Thursday night Napoleonic club, whatever they play, and have posted a number of videos, and you'll see them use little sleds, counter sleds, so that the opponent can't see what the counters are. If you don't have those, then you have to put little markers of each opposing side with their flags on top of counters, so that you can't see. So there are hidden rules, and you can't really do that solo. Although I'm gonna experiment with something. I actually purchased some sleds on Cube for Me. That's a great site, and it's in Poland, I think, but they're pretty efficient in getting you stuff once you order them. They also have sorting trays, etc., that work for individual games. And anyway, I'm going to try the sleds just to see how that looks and feels, even though I might not have anybody to play on the other side here locally. But the hidden rules, I think it still works without using those fully. And the reason I think it works is, first of all, units go often by initiative. There might be a particular core. Now, in this setup, the Allied side does not have a overall leader like this on the board, so they have to roll for initiative. So you're never sure what's going to happen with a particular core and that there's also, if you look up here, units that are out of command range, and they will have to roll in order to move. There are rules that I'll talk about them by playthrough, but you are in command when you have reinforcements, even though there might not be a commander. There's way up there's going to be reinforcements, and they're basically in command until you can give them a march order, and they can continue marching down to a specific point. You don't have to roll for them each turn until they reach that point, or a commander puts them into command. So that's one reason because of the the unsure nature of command and what you're actually going to be able to move. So that makes a difference. Stumpner does have a system where they have a chit pull, which would help as well. The original rules don't have that. And then the other thing that will help is some people, are totally against using these, but they do have cards now. And there's a separate sheet, about a 3-4 page sheet, that shows you how to use these cards. And these add an element of surprise and uncertainty to each side. And you'll see that, excuse me, if I post a little playthrough. So I think with those two parts of the equation, playing solo is perfectly reasonable without having hidden units. The research that goes behind this, I guess that's another thing that brought me back and convinced me to continue with the system. First of all, historically, you learn so much. Even if you bought a particular game, a volume, and then just went through the box and the player's aids with the details in the particular battle and the playbook, or they call it the study folder, like this. Every game has a study folder, and they're getting, as the newer ones come out, and the color is beautiful covers and backs of actual sites. And the designer notes are extensive on each volume, on the campaign and particular formations and commanders, etc. So you learn a lot with each volume. But it's just a labor of love. I mean, to do this entire series, like I said, there's probably 3 or 4 more that are coming out before he finishes with all the battles. I've got some sheets here. This, let's see. Okay, so here's from their website. It shows you each of the sets of battles, and then I wrote in what particular volume. That Piedmont is the one I'm doing now. Quadrilateral is one I have to get. Florus is one you can get as a starter. When I haven't written a volume in next to the set of battles, that means it hasn't been published yet. So you've got all the couple there that have yet to be published. There's a couple there, you see in the middle. Peninsular War Part 3 and 4. And then the last page is all done. I mean, trying to think of what the counterattack. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Napoleon's counterattack. You can see that has not been published yet, but that's not next up on the list. There at the bottom. Lauenburg, Dresden, Württemberg, Wartenberg. So as you can see, it's my suggestion would be take C'est la patrie en danger. That one I think you can access for a fairly inexpensive price if you look around. I would say that's one of the cheaper ones. They are pricey if you get into one of the ones that are out of print. I think it was Last Success was the one that I recently got before this new edition, or the new volume, Bonaparte and Piedmont. And that one had been pricey for a while, and then I found someone to buy it for a much more reasonable price, fortunately. So, you know, get one or two and try them out. But I would definitely try to grok the Zucker system first before you look at Stumpner rules. I've used the Stumpner, tried to use the full Stumpner rules, and I've also used, he suggests that you could just use the combat tables, or you could use the combat tables with the chip pull for formations. That's a possibility. But I think as Zucker conceived this, and as each one of them has been published and you look into the different scenarios, I'm not sure that the whole non-bloody retreat-based table is such a bad thing. I will tell you my initial, just as an example, my initial foray into this, before I decided to start over because I made some errors in reinforcements and I wanted to do it right. But one of the focal points is this Montanotte Superiore. There's a little village there. It's worth 3 victory points. The victory points based on geographic locations are not huge. They give you a focal point to think about in the direction of attack or defense. But in any case, when I first played, this particular village, worth 3, changed hands several times over the course of 4 turns. And the way the retreat rules go, because of zone of control, once you're in a zone of control, you can't get out of that zone of control unless there's a retreat, or if you're cavalry, you can retreat before combat. Otherwise, you're kind of locked there. And if one, let's just give you an example here. Let's say I had an attack here, and at 1-1, well, this would not be 1-1 because he'd be double with the village, but at 1-1, you can still have a positive outcome for the attacker. Let's say they retreated 1. This unit would be able to advance, and that would be the end of that French turn. And then the other turn goes with the Allied side. They're now locked. They must attack. And that's where you can run into some eliminated, or if they get into a position where there's been some other attacks and now they're going to have trouble retreating, and at 1-2 odds or 1-3 or whatever it might be, this could be a problem. So that's how back and forth you can get some of the combats and battles that happen during a particular scenario. So I think that part is very interesting. My last suggestion before I kind of close out this overview, I'm not sure if you can even call it an overview, but if you're at all curious, go on the OSG website, which I think is napoleongames.com. And before you read anything else, if you're not familiar with the system, before you read anything on BGG and Stumpner rules and any cons, blah, 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 etc., I would read as much as you can of the designer diary and background of Kevin Zucker, because there's just, even if you don't end up purchasing any of these games, that it's fascinating reading, because he's got some notes about when he was at Avalon Hill back in the 70s, and it's kind of eye-opening. And there's some great articles about comments on designers, developers going back and forth about changing a rule and why they didn't or why they did, or I think especially the article that I read recently on you know, what rules are really supposed to be meant for. And I think some of the frustration when people get into the system is that there might not be a particular detailed rule for every single situation, and you have to kind of play it at your best guess or what makes sense. And he kind of talks about that, and I think in this system that's what works. If you approach this as a historically detailed combat operational system that gets everything perfectly, I think you'll be disappointed. If you look at it as exploring options and seeing the circumstances that played out in these particular campaigns and the people behind them, and have some fun with it, that's when you're going to get the most enjoyment out of it. So, and that's where I've arrived at. I'm not worried about one side winning. I'm more concerned with how do you approach a particular conflict and scenario. So, well, I rambled enough, I guess, but if this is mostly for people who are looking at it, aren't maybe that familiar with it, and are just a little curious, I'll post a link to some of his articles that I think are interesting. So I think you should give it a look-see and maybe try out one of the cheaper volumes and see what happens. All right, we'll catch you on the replay when I get a chance to get that up. Thanks.